نؤمن في مؤسسة عبد الحميد شومان بأهمية الابتكار والإبداع في تلبية احتياجاتنا وإيجاد حلول عملية للتحديات التي تواجهها مجتمعاتنا. ارتأت المؤسسة إطلاق جائزة عبد الحميد شومان للابتكار بشقيها العلمي والمجتمعي، والتي تركز على الحقول التالية: التكنولوجيا الخضراء والاستدامة البيئية، الأمن الغذائي والتكنولوجيا الزراعية، الرعاية الصحية والتكنولوجيا الطبية، سوق العمل وحلول الإنتاجية الاقتصادية، وحلول تعلمية. وسيكون باب التقدم للجائزة مفتوحاً اعتباراً من العام 2018 وبموازنة تصل لغاية $1,000,000 أردني.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senior Project Director of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS, Marga Gual-Sola. Our moderators, Associate Professor, Chemical Biology, Hunter College, CUNY and American Museum of Natural History, Mandy Holford. And Reader in Physics and Astronomy from the University of St. Andrews, Martin Dominique. Our panelists, Secretary General of the International Consortium of Research Staff Associations, Simge de Volgo. Assistant Professor, University of Nicosia, Mirtani Pieri. Professor Dr. G.Y.A. at the Abdullah Gul University Izmir Institute of Technology, Yusuf Baran. Global Young Academy, Vladivostok, Russia, Sasha Gagansky. World Association of Young Scientists, Arab Region, Ola Zain. Director, CRDF Global MENA Office, Abir Ammarin. Associate Professor, University of Cape Town, Tolula Oni. Project Manager, the World Lecture Project, Michael Fischer. CTO BitCash Inc., owner MN Technologies, virtual reality consultant, M. Nadim Adai.
Welcome everyone, good afternoon. It is my great honor to introduce you to this outstanding international group of young leaders from all over the world. The topic of today's session is about broadening the skills, the training, and the experiences of young scientists to achieve the goals that we're discussing at this very forum for our society and for our planet. But let me take you back in time for a minute to tell you the story of how we got here. And there is a slide before this one, if you can please bring it back, so you can see what I mean, not just listen to it. In 2004, as a follow-up to the World Conference on Science, 1999, the World Association of Young Scientists, or WAYS, how we call it in short, was launched in Marrakesh with support from UNESCO. WAYS was born with the goal of bringing the young scientist perspective into the high-level global science policy discussions, such as the World Science Forum. We are here today. In 2007, our great champion, Mandy Holford, began an extraordinary initiative to ensure the participation of young scientists at every edition of the World Science Forum that culminated in a number of us meeting in Rio de Janeiro in 2013, the first time the World Science Forum was held outside of Budapest. This World Science Forum in Rio had very little participation of young scientists. in the audience, and let alone in the panels and the sessions. So we were not happy with that, and we decided to change it. So the organizations present here today, WACE, ICORSA, IAP, the Global Young Academy, the World Lecture Project, started a sort of a lobbying exercise or campaign to elevate the participation of the young scientists in this forum. In 2015, in Budapest, the Global Young Academy joined us officially, this coalition or network of networks, and we started a pre-conference workshop that brings together young scientists from all around the world for training on the issues that are going to be discussed in the forum, and also networking and training on how to interact with these high-level policymakers like you. But more importantly, the great achievement that we were very proud of at that time is that we managed to include one young scientist, at least one, in all the panels and sessions of the formal program of the World Science Forum, including a pitch in the incredible Hungarian parliament, as you can see in the slide. We were happy with that progress, but we needed more, and we wanted more. So what we called the road to Jordan became the road to Plenary. And for the first time in the World Science Forum history, there is a plenary session organized by and composed of young scientists. This year we have once again brought over 50 young scientists from all continents to provide them with this unique training and networking opportunity. You can see them on the bottom right, the workshop we had on Monday on the weaponization of emerging technologies. And you'll hear about the outcome of that workshop from the winner of a little pitch of that workshop. And finally, most importantly, we want to say thanks. We want to say thanks to the World Science Forum organizers, especially Princess Sumaya and Connor, that put up with us in our million emails to bring this to a reality today. And of course, the steering committee members of the World Science Forum for giving us this space. We're very pleased to see so many friends in the audience that have been with us for over 5 years in this journey, Budapest, in Rio, and even before. And I will now leave you with our moderators, Mandy and Martin, to begin the session. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for coming and joining us. Hello? It's on? Yes. Thank you for being here today for this what we hope is a special session. And as Marga has told you, it's been a long road to Jordan to have a Young Scientist plenary session. And so it's a very historic event that you're joining us for today. And what we're talking about and why we fought so hard for a plenary session is because we want to make sure that early career scientists like ourselves here on stage, but also like the ones in the audience, are being supported. So we want support for scientists, technologists, engineers, and all of the early career investigators who are working so hard to try to advance science and advance society. And in 3 simple words, what we're trying to do is build human capital. We're trying to build the human capital that's necessary to address not only the threats that are out there, like nuclear weapons or climate change, we also want to have human capacity to address the opportunities, right? So all the good things that are yet to come. How do we find new worlds in space? How do we have robots that can help us live and work in a more efficient way? How do we have it so that diseases such as cancer and heart attack and all of the epidemics that have occurred, Zika, Ebola, how do we work in a collective manner to mitigate these things, and how do we seize opportunities going forward? That's why we're eager to have you here, and that's why we fought so hard for this panel, because we really want early career scientists to be supported. And so, not sure how to go. The biggest challenge that you've seen and heard all throughout this meeting is tied to the Sustainable Development Goals. Young scientists have a role to play with the Sustainable Development Goals simply because we're going to inherit all of those problems. All of those problems are going to be our problems. And so again, with this panel, and again, why we fight so hard is because we want our voice to be heard as we figure out ways in how to not only achieve these goals, but make them scalable and sustainable. And so in order to do that, we need to build capacity. We need to build capacity for collective action, because on our own, each of us are doing amazing things that you'll hear all about, but together we can significantly impact change, and that change only comes when we have a collective group going in the same direction with shared values and shared efforts, right? And so as Marga hinted at, this requires a skills development and a skills transfer. So we need to transfer the skills that we've all learned in laboratories or in different kinds of graduate education training, and develop how we can transfer those skills to a policy setting or to a diplomacy setting. And so today, we're going to talk about this skills ecosystem that needs to be built. And so I've highlighted some of the skills that the speakers are going to address when they go through their talks. Starting at the top, science communication and collaboration. If scientists cannot communicate even with each other, how are we expected to communicate with policymakers or decision makers? It's not going to be possible. So we have to learn how to effectively communicate our innovations from the lab to decision makers. And we also have to effectively learn how to cooperate. We don't like hearing the word no, but sometimes you have to hear a no. Second, building partnerships. How do we build partnerships that are effective? It's no longer possible in academia to work in a siloed skill or a siloed field and say, I'm a physicist, I know nothing about biology, or I'm a chemist, I know nothing about computer science. That world doesn't exist anymore. In order to tackle the hard problems of the world, we have to be transdisciplinary and we have to be transboundary. And so how does that happen? How do we build those partnerships? Third, resilience, or as the scientists would call it, doing an experiment. If there's one thing we know, it's how to fail. And we fail a lot, but we build ourselves back up. So how do we transfer the resilient skills that we identify within the lab to policy and to decision makers? And then leveraging resources. As I said before, we're now in this transboundary world, right, where we have all of these webs that are connecting us. How do we leverage those webs so we don't have to repeat the same things over and over again? A great example here in the region is the Sesame. Sesame project is a great way of leveraging resources. How do we teach early career scientists to leverage their resources so it doesn't become a cry session because you don't have a particular instrument, but it becomes a how do I and how to. The next, building capacity. As I said in the previous slides, individually we're all doing excellent things, but it can grow with you and it will die with you if you don't transfer it and bring it to a larger audience. And so how do we build capacity so that what you grew can be shared with a wider audience? And then the last one, creating opportunities, specifically jobs of the future. How do we create opportunities for all of the early career scientists that we're training so that all of that training doesn't go to waste? How do they recognize their skills, and how do they create new markets, new environments, new opportunities for them to engage? This is what we're going to be discussing today here on the panel. And so, with that, these are the topics we hope to hit. We hope to discuss the role that young scientists play in science diplomacy and promoting peace. We also hope that we demonstrate the evolution of the skills required for young scientists to engage in a global setting. These challenges and opportunities that are out there, we have to be prepared to deal with them. And then finally, how do we create that skills economy or that skills ecosystem that I've been talking about to identify career paths for the young scientists? And so to kick us off on this journey, we're going to start on this end with Simi and Maritini.
Hello everyone, welcome to the session of Young Scientists. We are two scientists from Cyprus. Myself, I am from the north part of Cyprus, and Mirtani here, molecular biologist and organic chemist. We want to tell you about the Science for Peace initiative. We are also part of ICORSA, representing today. So I want to show you Cyprus. It's a very small island in the middle of the Mediterranean, as you can see. Here are some pictures. Just a brief history of Cyprus. The island has been standing divided for the past 43 years, despite the efforts of the Turkish and Greek Cypriot citizens, United Nations, international community to reunite the island. In 2004, as a result of the referendum on resolution by the United Nations so-called Annan Plan, only the Greek part of the island has joined the European Union, unfortunately leaving Turkish Cypriots in international isolation. These isolations are the main reason why we need science diplomacy in Cyprus more than ever. And as young scientists, we are embracing the role to promote science diplomacy. Isolations come in the form of challenges. They are forming many challenges, especially for the early career young scientists, specifically in the north part of Cyprus, more dominantly. So these challenges come in the form of limited resources for research, hence limited research opportunities, lacking or very minimal infrastructure at the institutions, as well as limited travel due to no direct flights to the north part of the island. So to overcome these challenges, we must evolve transborder science skills to engage in the future's increasingly globalized world. And we can only overcome borders if we do collaboration. So converging the Turkish and Greek Cypriot scientific community in Cyprus would lead to collaborations on a national and international level, which would open new doors to new funding bodies in order to improve the scientific research and innovations, and at the same time creating a positive environment towards a united Cyprus by stimulating peace. So as the first step to the union of the two scientific communities in Cyprus, we have founded Science for Peace Initiative. This is a starter, and it is a follow-up organization from the Science Diplomacy Side event hosted by UNESCO in the previous World Science Forum. This initiative is also stemming from the Science for Peace project, which was submitted by a team of Turkish and Greek Cypriot scientists to the competition opened by UNESCO, and it was the winner project out of 14 countries.
So the Science for Peace initiative is born in Cyprus, and our slogan is Science Overcomes Borders. In our case, the border is this green line in Cyprus that has been dividing our island for the past 43 years. We have two main goals. The first is we want this initiative to grow, and from 2 young researchers to go to 20 and 200 and 2,000. And we want to establish a united association for Cypriot scientists so that we can address our common issues and so that we can advance science diplomacy. Our second goal is to organize science outreach events. So we want them to be open to all communities on the island, across and over our border, especially targeted at the young generation, because they are our future. You see, our aim is for science to be taken outside the classrooms, the labs, and the universities, and to actually reach the people of Cyprus. Because in Cyprus, we need more things to unite us than to divide us. We need this uniting power of science, sometimes even stronger than the repulsion of politics. Now, in order to do that, we need young scientists to master one skill, and that's the skill of science communication. The skill of making science simple so as for people to understand and to be inspired. Now, in the past few years, a number of science outreach events have been organized in the island, events open to all communities. We've organized science cafes, science workshops, and we've even organized science communication masterclasses in order for young scientists to be trained on how to make science simple. Today I'd like to talk to you about two of our efforts. One, our effort to create the first Cyprus Science Center, and the second one, a festival that we run in the island. So, in our divided capital, Nicosia, we had a vision, and the vision was to create the first Cyprus Science Center. Imagine a place where people from different communities, different languages, religions, they can come together and explore the very mysteries that make up our world. A place where people from diverse backgrounds can experience this global language of science. In 2017, this vision came one step closer to reality as we received funding by a Horizon 2020 grant And now we're in the process of preparing this application for part 2. If this is successful, then we will have funding in order to have the first Cyprus Science Center, a place that will be located into a divided capital, but hopefully a place to celebrate what unites us all, and that is science. Now, till then, the biggest science outreach event we have in the island is the Mediterranean Science Festival. Now, this is a 4-day celebration of science that takes place in Cyprus, but welcomes people from the whole of the Mediterranean region. And since pictures can talk 1,000 words, I'm going to try and share with you a video. Great. So this is the Mediterranean Science Festival that took place last April in Cyprus. The theme was Evolving with Science. We had 50 participating bodies, universities, research institutions, 10,000 visitors, including almost 3,000 children. Researchers brought their science out in the public, making it interactive and accessible and open to all, from robotics to 3D printing to virtual reality to medicine. We had star nights where children were looking at the stars, realizing that we're all under the same sky. Turkish and Greek Cypriot children making perfumes together, led by this great lady next to me. So this is the Mediterranean Science Festival in Cyprus, a celebration of science and of the things that are common to us.
So we are aiming to use science outreach to go beyond the scientific community in order to reach out to the minds of the 2 younger generations of Cyprus, in order to build a bridge between them by using science as a global linker. Science has many powers, and one of them is to unite. So the main thing that unites us in Cyprus is that Cyprus is our common home. And when we wake up every morning, we smell the same air, which is blended with the beautiful smells of the citrus fruits and the endemic plants of Cyprus. Science Behind Perfumes workshop is bringing many students and children from many different schools all over Cyprus to come together to explore the chemistry of perfumes and the physiology of smell to produce their very own first organic perfume sprays.
Whereas each culture is unique, the language, the food, the music, still the structure of the DNA and the speed of light, they're exactly the same, all the way from Jordan to Budapest and from Cyprus to China. So within our unique cultures, let's also celebrate our common culture, the culture of science.
Science overcomes borders. So let the scientist overcome borders, just like a bird flying in the sky and not thinking about the fences in the field. Thank you.
Our next speaker is going to be Yusuf.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Yusuf Baran, professor of molecular biology and genetics, and I'm from Turkey. There are a lot of ways to connect the world. We can connect the world through the roads, through the airports, through the railway station, and many others. But the best way to connect the world is through the science and, of course, the scientists. In the current world, we have a lot of challenges. We have the challenge of the climate change, we have the challenge of the poverty, security, and of course, the peace. God asked the scientists, how do you do science? And the scientists answer, we separated the science into different disciplines like physics, biology, mathematics, and many others. And everyone is focusing on its own discipline and trying to solve the issues. And then God says, the scientist, did you ask me to do that when you separated the science? So currently, we are creating the borders between the countries, between the disciplines, between the cultures, but we can never solve the current challenge and the problems in the world by ourselves living in our countries or within our disciplines. When you look at the Global Young Academy, we have the 200 outstanding active members from 70 different countries coming together and trying to solve the current challenge all together. I'm also a member of the World Academy of Sciences Young Scientist Affiliate Network, and in this academy we also have more than 200 young scientists coming together, collaborating to solve the current challenge and make a big contribution to the future. When you look at the country that I'm coming from, I feel my country as a bridge between the developing and developed world, between the Islamic and the Christian world as well, between the poverty and the rich, between the north and the south. So the bridge coming from Turkey as a science, of course, is important. So in my country, we have a lot of bilateral collaborations between Turkish scientists and the scientists from more than 70 different countries. These scientists can come together, submit a project together, and then do the science exchange of the ideas and, of course, the experience and know-hows. We also have many bilateral collaborations with different organizations. When we want to build the partnership as a young scientist or the skills for the future young scientist, of course, the most important one to my knowledge is the success. In my culture, we have a proverb. The tongue never has the bone, so it speaks. But when you have a successful story, when you have a successful CV, it's always much easier to convince your partners. The second one is, of course, you have to be clear and simple when you try to build a partnership and when you try to convince your partners. The third one is the transparency and the openness. You should be clear to your partner what you want to do and how you want to do it as well. Of course, the self-confidence is another important issue when you want to build a partnership. And of course, you have to share. You have to share what you have. You have to share what you know. You have to share your facilities. And more importantly, you have to share the outcome. What you get from this collaboration should be shared between the partners. So you should know very well how to share and when to share. You should be careful about the sensitivities of the cultures and the countries as well. Every region has its own sensitivities and the rules. And of course, although sometimes it might be difficult for us to understand these sensitivities, but we have to be respectful to them. We should create success stories because success stories will convince new partners or the new candidates to be involved in our partnership. Never give up. This is the key in my life. Throughout my life, I never give up in any of my initiative or any of my project. And of course, this is a long way and you have to be patient. And of course, it takes time, so you have to be just insisting on your project, what you want to do for your country or for your culture or the humankind. This is a new partnership that we just created yesterday. So I just used the advantage of being in Jordan. I was invited by Jordanian University of Science and Technology, which is ranked number around 600 in the world. Yesterday I met with the vice president and the deans of the faculties. And now we come to a position to exchange the ideas, the facilities, the students, and know-hows between my university and the University of Science and Technology of the Jordan. The aim to build partnership is to bridge different worlds and transform our societies through the science. The worlds refer to the sharp divide between the northern and southern hemispheres, the east and the west, the gap between the rich and the poor, and of course the highly educated and the illiterate societies. As a scientist, I believe that science is a universal language that overcomes all the nationalities, races, ethnicities, and the religions. Science can overcome and eliminate the borders and obstacles, and we can share our knowledge and expertise for the good of humanity. The language of the science carries a noble aim, which is to serve the humanity. And everyone in the society needs science. This picture was taken in Brazil during our TN meeting, and here you can see a cleaner from the university is just trying to understand what scientists are doing and trying to understand our one of the scientific poster on the stage. And I am grateful that we all, since the beginning of this meeting, are speaking how we can improve and how we can create the science in the world. So if, as a scientist, we use more and more ink and paper, then there will be less gun, less bullet, and of course less blood. Then we can create much better and more peaceful world. Thank you for listening.
Our next speaker is going to be Ola. Oh, Sasha. Excuse me, Sasha.
Thank you. Hello? Thanks, Yusuf. I just wanted to mention that when we met with Yusuf in the Global Young Academy, the relationship between Russia and Turkey was extremely difficult. But we've started the collaboration. We thought it's important that we work no matter what together, and now it's pleasing to see it's better. And I would like to encourage everyone to not be afraid of the political situation and make collaborators abroad. And I'm a member of a Global Young Academy, and this is a relatively young organization with the scientists from all disciplines we can get and all countries we can have, and it's about 200 members, very equal in terms of gender and inclusiveness of all trends and sciences, open to new projects and so on. I would very much recommend to join this organization. So why we think that early career scientists of all disciplines have the promise to make the positive for the future. So the early career, because we are not yet finalized in our ways, we are not completely shaped by one discipline, and we are open to new ways, to new collaborations and new emerging disciplines. Why international? Because we think that the global issues that the world is now facing can be only solved by fitting everyone's culture in, and because these are the global issues by definition. And why academics is because the scientists, the academics, they create convincing arguments. And why all disciplines? Because each discipline has a different angle, and the convincing argument is different, but we all learn to make these convincing arguments, and together we can really make arguments that convince everyone if we communicate our science properly. So I think that the time has come for highly cooperative ways in science and in other domains of human endeavor. And I just wanted to show the picture. There was a great biologist in Russia 100 years ago. He was working for a lifetime on studying how cooperation is an important factor in survival, not only humans, but cooperations between humans and other species, and how cooperation between species is important for their survival, for their success. And I think this is very obvious through the hard history of the last century, where competition was put forward. People were studying, when they were looking at Darwin's theory, they were putting forward competition and so on, how these things failed. You know, now we have to invent ways that are cooperative, and we have to cooperate without fear. And of course, there are other great scientists and philosophers who underline this importance. And I think that from biological perspective, we are animals and we are great apes. And I think we have to learn from the remaining species. Of course, we've lost half of all the species in my lifetime, and we will lose even more. But we need to try to find ways to learn from the species, to see what is good about them and how can we preserve the remaining diversity for the harmony, and not only for the harmonies, but and from my genetic perspective, we need genes from other nations to survive together, and there is a strict scientific explanation to that. And biochemically, we need other chemicals. It's hard to imagine hard to use the computer to make this diversity that we have in the nature, the molecules in nature. So this is an example of one project we have in the Global Young Academy, Biodiversity for Survival via Biomedicine. I think it has the promise to solve few SDGs together, because it is a merger between the biodiversity conservation and biomedicine, the drug discovery. And I think there is a place for lots of disciplines and all nations. This picture of the world shows the global North and global South coming together with what they have, and lots of different indigenous knowledge, and lots of place for everyone. And I think it is an example of how Global Young Academy solves the issues, and how more projects will be solved in this way. Thank you very much.
So we've heard from Maritini and Simge on communication, the skill of science communication and collaboration. We've just heard from Sasha and Youssef on building partnerships. Our next speaker is going to speak about resilience. So we're going back into the lab for a little bit, and she's going to speak about learning to fail. Ola?
Thank you, Mindy. I'm the one who's going to be talking about resilience and all the experiments in the lab. So I'm very pleased to be here today. I would just want to start by thanking our host country, Jordan, the organizing committee, for inviting me, and Arabways for representing them and giving me this opportunity. Actually, I'm a young molecular cell physiologist by training, and I'm the first woman to hold and be granted a PhD in cell and molecular biology from the American University of Beirut since the PhD program was relaunched. For me, choosing and taking the decision to pursue my PhD in my home country is itself an example of resilience. After a few days, this is going to mark the 4th year of my PhD defense, so it's the 4th year anniversary this month. If you would like to know more about my research, just a quick search of my name on PubMed would give you a result of the list of papers that I have published so far. However, this tells you very little or nothing about the underlying work and efforts that have led to these publications. I'm afraid it's not as easy as it seems. So it required a lot of resilience and determination on my behalf, something that's not reflected in this list of papers. Consider this publication, for example, if we want to analyze its life cycle, being a biologist, all the way from an idea to the paper that you see. This paper is the result of 2 years of intensive research work, 2 years of dedication, meticulous work, and patience. The experiments that had been conceived in this paper, they were performed after an extensive literature review and several brainstorming sessions with my mentor. And many of the experiments had to be repeated several times before the method was perfected. Actually, during this stage, as a dedicated and resilient basic scientist, you have no control over your time. So the experiment dictates when you come to the laboratory and when you depart. These cells might not be confluent the day that you need them, and all these problems that might happen on the way. They have their schedule, which dictates yours. Actually, weekends and vacations almost did not exist for like 4 years. And my best friends were the cells, the rats, the media, the glassware, and everyone in the lab, but not a person. So these were my best friends. Those two figures, they come from that same paper. And what these figures do not show are the zillion times that the experiment had to be repeated before we were able to figure the right dose and time which is needed for leptin to act. So this required a lot of time, and let alone the technical problems that happened on the way. Cells die just suddenly, rats die, So they are not confluent when we need them. The CO2 incubator might go crazy, whatever all the tanks and all these happen, and we have to deal with that. Things never take place as scheduled, but what I was told, this is research. So you have to accept it or leave it. Add to all that the instability that I had in my country, be it at the political, economic, or all levels. So there were actually times when turmoil was happening and I had to get stuck in the lab because not to ruin an ongoing experiment. I'm waiting the rats and the cells, so I cannot leave them and go even if everything is happening. Actually, there are several changes that we face in Lebanon and the region, which I guess they're common. The most common thing is publishing. So it's very difficult to publish in prestigious high impact factor journals, especially as my case when working alone with no collaborators from inside or outside the region. So getting the paper published, these papers, was not the easiest step, as we had no collaborators who would supplement the paper with the state-of-art experiments that we could not do at the national level. So for instance, I would have used intestinal cells if we had collaborators, instead of differentiating my colon cancer cells into intestinal cells, which is very time consuming, and I have to wait like a lot of days for them to change from colon to intestinal and use them and make my experiments. Another thing is the lack of multidisciplinarity and, again, the collaboration, even in the department of the same institution, let it alone among different countries in the region, given that a Lebanese needs a visa to visit most countries in the region, so that adds to our problems. Another thing are definitely the funding problems, which are limited. And when granted, the funds are really minuscule and they barely cover the needed costs and needs that we need. Orders take a lot of time, very long time, and sometimes supplies just arrive after we need them. We're just done with the experiment, they just show up. Above all that comes the limited career opportunities. So even when you're done with your PhD, the challenges even are bigger with these limited career opportunities, especially due to the very low number of research institutions, which limits the number of positions available. So we have a high demand and a low supply, which is creating a lot of problem. Actually, most PhD holders, they opt for a position at a university or they have to find a job outside the region. So that's creating a lot of limitation. And another thing is the many fresh graduates believe, because we're told by our mentors and everyone, that academia is your ultimate career and fate. So there's no way to make it outside academia, but in fact, and that's what I guess one of our options is that we should have opportunities outside academia. We should have a role in public institutions, in policies, in health institutions, in government, in NGOs, and in others where scientists should have a role, and that's the aim of science diplomacy and others. To quit or not to quit, that's the question that, at least me, has to face as a researcher every day. So here's a very nice poem written by a researcher, a scientist, about whether to quit or not. So, however, having this question in mind, I know in parallel that to succeed, it's important to persist. And I believe that hard work pays off, so skills are acquired on the way of persistence. So with all these challenges, my PhD work yielded 3 internationally published articles and several conference publications. And I was also awarded a scholarship from the Lebanese National Council for Scientific Research. Actually, one of the ways which help you to be more resilient is joining institutions and platforms such as Arabways, which I'm representing today, which is the Arab World Association of Young Scientists. that aims to provide the Arab young scientists with opportunities, be it at the level of jobs, funds, PhDs, scholarships. It actually aims to provide this intra-Arab brain circulation and mobility and facilitate the mobility of youth across the region. So it works to link the existing diaspora networks and initiatives in the region with those who are outside the region. Despite all the challenges that we face, and that's a reality, at the national and at the regional level, some bright news make you resist and persist. So I have graduated, as I told you, and I'm teaching now at the American University of Beirut, which was just ranked a few days ago #1 in the Arab region, according to the QS World University Ranking. I'm also a faculty member in the American University of Science and Technology, which is a leading expert institution in forensic sciences and in testing of genetically modified organisms, both at the national and at the regional level. So this is considered some encouragement for us. I'm, after all, a basic scientist. And however, with the resilience that I've acquired as a researcher, there are other skills that I've mastered as a basic scientist, which I believe allow me to contribute to the advancement of science diplomacy and society, which is our topic, by tackling some of the global goals for sustainable development. So as an educator and a teacher, I believe that I'm contributing to providing quality education for many generations in my country. On another note, my work on the hormone leptin and its implications in fighting obesity and so many related diseases allow me to contribute to the good health and well-being of my compatriots. Moreover, the skills of networking, having an open-minded approach, communication skills, the ability to work in a team, and all these which we gain as a researcher, and we will not gain except if we are in the lab and really a researcher and a dedicated one, gives us the opportunity to work and interact with several individuals and scientists, be it at the national, regional, or international level, which help us achieve this sustainable development. Finally, I would like just to thank you for not quitting and listening.
Thank you very much, Ola. And so Ola's talking about resilience in the lab, and our next speaker, Abir, is going to talk specifically about how we can leverage resources. So how do we go from being very local to national and international? Thank you very much.
Thank you, and let me start by saying how impressed I am with the young scientists and researchers that I've met for the past 2 days. And this all the thanks goes to Sitti Somaya for hosting this prestigious forum and for bringing us together in order to address I'm sure many of the challenges that we were discussing, be it on backstage or with the young scientists or through the events and sessions, they're more or less the same. They're not country specific. So I'm coming from an international organization. It's called CRDF Global. I'm heading the Jordan office, which covers the MENA. CRDF Global was established in 1995 as an independent, non-for-profit organization that promotes international science and technology cooperation through programs and services. The organization, sorry. Oh, I have to go back. Okay, no problem. So the organization works that covers more than 60 countries. We have more than 100, thank you, more than 100 employees that speaks more than 30 languages. And basically, I will be not spending much time talking about the challenges that faces a young scientist, since I think my colleagues here, they addressed most of them. But I'm going to go through them to connect them to what we can do in order to solve these challenges. So obviously, lack of funding is very important challenge that is personal and professional financial restrictions that faces the researchers and scientists, and how to go through channels in order to get funding for their researches or their work. And also we have the exposure to professional skills enhancement, where there are like many restrictions. Sometimes it's English language, like writing reports, writing peer-reviewed, and having an access to funding and funders. Also the turmoiled geographic area, where it's sometimes restricted for people to travel from one country to another. And this all leads for the brain drain, as Ola addressed earlier, which is a very, I think, a serious issue among our scientists here within the region. How we engage young scientists. CRDF Global has many programs and capabilities in addressing these challenges. Technical and professional trainings and network building for scientists and innovators, research capacity building at universities and institutions, innovation ecosystem development in emerging countries, fellowship focused on research and policy, science diplomacy, stewardship, program design and management, and we conduct targeted research competitions. So I'm gonna give you like 2 examples of what we have done previously with a couple of scientists. The first one is Diane Postsari from Indonesia. Diane, she received a Robin Copeland Memorial Fellowship. This fellowship, it falls like with 3 stages. It has the courseware or the academic, and then the internship, and the capstone, which is the independent research. This fellowship, it helped Diane addressing chemical security within labs, within her, the labs that she worked at in Indonesia. And during her 6 months courseware in the United States and internship at the AAAS at the time, and then she went back to Indonesia for her independent research, where she had interviewed many scientists in Indonesia to address the chemical security issues and safety and security measures, be it nuclear or chemical. While I'm discussing this fellowship program, I would like to announce that we have just launched the 2018 Robin Copeland Memorial Fellowship for young women scientists from Egypt. And this fellowship, you can have more details from my colleague, Susan King. She's from our office from the United States. She'll be available around, and we have a booth here where you can get more information and details. The other example that I have is Ziad Sankari. He's from Lebanon, where he went through a very sad situation, the passing away of his dad, and he knew that he could have saved his life by having the early warning detection of the heart failure. So he was motivated, and he went after that to design a heart monitor device that gives a vital signs of any heart attack that may happen to that person. So he received the GIST competition in 2011, and it was managed by CRDF Global, and it was offered from Department of State, where he pitched his idea, and he received the seed funds, where he toured many states in order to get the support needed, and he went back to his country with a very successful business. So with each challenge, there are definitely some opportunity coming. So the opportunities within this area, at least the MENA area, there is a tremendous need, and there is a support from the top and policymaker, as we have seen for the past 2 days at least. And there is so much to work on. So I know we mentioned that the demand is huge. We just need to address how we can tackle and fill that need within our support system. Thank you so much. And
Thank you very much, Abir. Our next speaker is going to be Tolu, who's going to tell us a little bit about how we can create building capacity.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so this was the building capacity is my remit, and this was the title of my talk, but I decided, I changed it since, and I decided to write a poem just for you. Here it goes. Who do we train? Who do we retain? What do we teach? How might we reach? So I'm going to take, did not know I had poetry skills. So I'm going to run through the poem as a guideline for my talk. So I arrived on Sunday and received the speaker pack and the conference program at the hotel. And after a long journey, I was reinvigorated to see these pages featuring future scientists and science leaders. This, I reflected, not only demonstrates the commitment of the conference to young scientists and Jordan all in general, but also the progress made on gender equity in attracting and training scientists. And those of you who have this program, which I guess you all have, can appreciate what pages were not on there. Because it's also worth noting that this gender balance does not automatically trickle down to gender equity in later years without concerted effort. And the pattern of gender equity in youth and early career scientists, but insufficient progress amongst science leaders, is seen across the world, not just in Jordan. And if we are to ensure that the investment into gender equity in the earlier years, which is clearly paying off, as we previously saw, translates into gender equity amongst established and risen stars, if you like, we will need a concerted and sustained effort to address the leaks in the pipeline. Thus, in considering a building of a STEM capacity with gender equity, we should be asking not just how do we get girls into STEM, but how do we ensure gender equity across the STEM pipeline? Who do we train, but also who do we retain? The third line of my poem was, what do we teach? I'd first like to highlight the importance of what we teach. Over the course of the program, there's been a significant mention of natural sciences, but little on social sciences. Building capacity across these disciplinary divides will go a long way towards the ability to bridge science and policy. And the recent merger of the International Council of Science and the International Social Science Council to form the International Science Council that includes all sciences is truly a step in the right direction in this regard. Secondly, in terms of what we teach, Inasmuch as we speak here about the important role that science can and should play in policy and in broader society, there remains little focus on the implications of science in the teaching of science and in building capacity to bridge STEM and policy. To this end, I'd like to highlight a couple of ongoing initiatives that try to address this. The first is the regional African chapter of the International Network for Government Science Advice, which has a strong commitment to bridging STEM and policy by raising awareness about the science advice landscape in the region, and particularly in the African region, introducing early career scientists to the complexities of policy making and science advice. Similarly, a AAAS training program on science diplomacy for early career scientists globally gives a grounding in the ways in which skills acquired as lifelong learners and some of the challenges that have been highlighted earlier can be leveraged at the intersection of STEM, policymaking, and in general for the advancement of peace in wider society. Through the commitment of organizations like this, we are making progress, but more can and should be done. Lastly, my last line of my poem, how do we support early career scientists in regions across the world, particularly in countries where science is lagging? In other words, how might we reach? What I will discuss here is a couple of initiatives of the Global Young Academy, which you've heard about before, committed to nurturing the next generation of science leaders, and some of the initiatives that are ongoing in this regard, really trying to reach these early career scientists. So on Monday this week, just before the day before the conference started, all young scientists attending this forum were invited to participate in a capacity building workshop organized by these organizations here and facilitated by No Innovation. The theme of the workshop was avoiding the weaponization of science, and a key component was learning the cultural dexterity skills required. So beyond diversity, how do we navigate the different cultures that we interact with, and in order to facilitate international collaborations? And participants applied these skills learned throughout the day to develop a two-minute pitch on an intervention to avoid the weaponization of science, and presented this to a high-level panel. And at the end of this session, we'll be hearing from the winning pitch. But I'd like to bring your attention to one of the skills taught in this workshop, which is relevant to in the context of capacity building, and that's active listening. In order to understand the context of early career scientists, barriers facilitators to doing and advancing their science and their scientific careers, it's important to actively listen. Listening without preconceived notions or judgment. Listening without the me too interruption in your head or verbally. Yes, yes, I hear you, but it's always been that way. And we all came through the system and we're doing fine, right? So what are you moaning about? Listening with empathy. This plenary session is a fine example of active listening as a tool to reach and nurture the early career scientists, for which I commend the organizing committee of this year's forum. The GLOSIS study, a project of the GYA, is another example of active listening. These studies survey young and early career scientists from across regions to examine challenges they face in their countries or regions and to make data-based recommendations on how to address. The first of these regional studies is complete for the ASEAN region, and the report was launched earlier this year and is available on the website. And one of the key issues, for example, that emerged from the GLOSIS surveys to date was a need for mentorship and leadership training. And in response to this, we developed the Science Leadership Program that target early career scientists, paying close attention to gender equity, with identifying those who would have the potential to benefit. These regional initiative on the Science Leadership Program is another example of reaching these scientists. We've run regional science leadership programs in Africa, where the third cohort was recently trained, and more recently in Asia, we plan to extend to Latin America. The second GLOSIS study, what I mentioned earlier, GLOSIS Africa, is currently ongoing, and I invite all present with connections in Africa to visit the website and share this survey with early career researchers and students in and of Africa. And following this completion of the study, we'll be partnering with organizations to develop interventions to address the gaps identified. These initiatives highlighted in my presentation seek not only to plug the pipeline leaks, but to start to fix the plumbing system altogether. And in doing so, aiming to build capacity, training and retaining scientists across all genders and regions, teaching skills to bridge STEM and policy, and identifying, reaching, and nurturing the risen science stars of tomorrow. Thank you.
So if we got through the skills ecosystem correctly and we've built capacity, what do we do with all these trained scientists, technologists, and engineers? This is the question from Mikhail in Jobs of the Future. Creating opportunities is your skill.
Thank you very much, young scientists. Thank you very much for the invitation to this session. I'm not young and I'm not a scientist. I'm coming from the World Lecture Project, which is a platform for academic videos. And together with the young scientists organizations which are here, we want to carry out the Job of the Future contest, where scientists and scholars will be asked to describe their visions of future jobs. I think that is very important to talk about global problems in forums like the World Science Forum, but I also think that we should come up with concrete suggestions how to implement our goals and visions into practical life. And with our work, we are forming the world we live in. As long as we work in unsustainable jobs, creating unsustainable products, we contribute to the destruction of our planet. Whereas if we work in sustainable jobs, we improve our planet or even upgrade it. So the question is, how do we create sustainable jobs? And this is exactly the goal of our contest. We want to support the creation of sustainable jobs. My goal for today is to invite you, to involve you into our initiative, either as participants or as partners that help to implement that help to implement our initiative on a global level. So, but first I will describe you what the contest is about. So in the first step, we will announce the contest throughout our networks. We will ask the participants to produce short videos about their ideas, about their job visions. Then we will upload, and then to upload them to the World Lecture Project video website. Then the communities afterwards will rate the proposals and comment on them. The best rated proposals will be evaluated by experts. The winners will be awarded, and we hope that they can present their ideas at the next World Science Forum in Budapest. After the contest, we will help the participants or the winners to take their ideas beyond the conceptual stage. We will motivate them to work out job profiles, and we will invite companies, institutions, and organizations to help bringing the jobs into the market. So, the evaluation criteria of the jobs of the future will be the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Thus, we will help to implement these goals into work life, and we make sure that our jobs, the jobs that we propose, promote, that they are sustainable. So I really hope that you got inspired to join our project, and now I will tell you how you can participate. First of all, of course, you can suggest your own job vision. We want especially scientists to participate in our contest, as they are innovators. They come up with new ideas, with new scientific findings, and now we want you to think one step ahead. How do the jobs look like that implement your scientific findings into practical life? You can register your idea directly on the World Lecture Project website. You register first yourself, and then you create a topic and upload a video which describes your vision, your job vision, and a short description about your job vision, your job idea. The ideas should be, thank you. The ideas should be as concrete as possible. Next to your videos, you can give up closer descriptions. What problems do you solve? What is the social context, and what is the hardware that you need? And on our new website, you can also create courses where interested people can learn the skills for their future jobs. So, yes. One more thing, we really want that as many people get to know about our initiative as possible. So it would be really great if you could help us with disseminating our project throughout your own networks, or if you are running an own initiative that is similar to ours, contact us, link your activities with us. We came here to the World Science Forum to create global partnerships, and we should really use this opportunity. Thank you very much.
So we've gone through the skills ecosystem that I described initially: communication and collaboration, building partnerships, resilience, Ola, leveraging resources, Abrir, thank you, building capacity, Tulu, and creating opportunities, Misha. And in going through these skills, we've created an opportunity in the workshop that we had as a side event with the Young Scientists Group. I'd like to thank again all the organizers that made that possible. So the International Academy Panel, IAP, GYA, Global Young Academy, Arab Ways, also the World Lecture Project, eCorsa, and most importantly, AAAS, the American Association of Science, UNESCO, CRDF Global, and the Princess and the Royal Family of Jordan for bringing us all here to have this event. And we were talking about creating opportunities. An opportunity was created for the last speaker on our panel. As you see, there are 12 speakers up here. Putting together a panel like this takes a lot of energy and time from several different nations, of several different cultures. And we had a pitch of the, we were talking about weaponizing panel, weaponizing science, sorry. It's a weaponized panel. Weaponizing science as it pertains to early career scientists, engineers, and technologists. How do we turn dual-use technology into tools that we have developed, but not into weapons for policymakers to use? And the winning pitch came from Nadim's team, and he's going to give us a 3-minute summary of what they discussed.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thanks to the Global Young Academy for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. A little bit about me. I'm a Syrian Canadian based in Edmonton, and I'm also with ICORSA and CAPS. So as part of this workshop, we had to propose a project, and this is what I'm talking about. So it's about blockchain technology. Is it a blessing or a weapon? So in 2007, a new decentralized currency popped up on the World Wide Web. It was called Bitcoin. Now, it went up in value from about half a cent US per Bitcoin in 2007 to about $7,500 today per Bitcoin. So now we have about 120 different cryptocurrencies last time I checked. And on a daily basis, there's about $11 billion of trades. So governments are understandably worried about what goes on with these trades. They're worried that some of these trades might be used for nefarious purposes, such as funding terrorism, organized crime, rogue regimes, or hiding corruption in developed or developing countries. So my team and I, our solution was to propose a global expert group. We called it the World Cybersecurity Organization that will do three things. Sorry about that, I didn't realize it was so close. Look at the legal, political, technical, social, and economic aspects of cryptocurrencies. B, produce a report that provides guidelines on how governments can deal with these things and legislate them in a way that wouldn't push them underground. And C, propose research projects that will have two effects: solve more complex issues, but more importantly, train highly qualified personnel, young scientists such as us, so that the global pool of experts grows, which is very, very limited at the moment. It's our belief that if done correctly, cryptocurrencies or blockchain technology can provide economic freedom for the public, a globally stable currency system that operates independently from countries and is more or less immune to economic failure and instability. And all this can be done with a high level of trust and transparency. It's our hope that the establishment of this group would be able to do that. And I would like to call on everyone in the audience, if you're interested, if anyone else, if you know someone who's interested, if you want to back us do this, or if you want to facilitate that we meet or we perform a talk, please, please, please email me. I've got 2 emails. You can reach me at any one of them, and I'd be more than happy to talk with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nadeem. And so now we're going to have a quick discussion here with the panel, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. The first time. Okay. I'm assuming we have time for a quick question. One question for the panel, which will be, what do you think are the biggest barriers to young scientists collaborating with policymakers? We're all in this setting right here at the World Science Forum to try to figure out how do we bridge this divide, right? How do we bridge the divide between scientists and policymakers? So what do you think is the biggest barrier that you think should be addressed? And we'll answer this sort of very quickly. Can we have a hand for folks who would like to answer? Abir, we'll start with you. We'll do speed round.
I think it's kind of a bureaucracy. It's very controlling, where young scientists cannot be heard as they should be. Also, the trust issue. Sometimes, at least from our region, they trust more in the international experts. They don't have much trust of the local experts here. This is where I think they need to build the trust relationship between the policymakers and the scientists. Thank you.
Tolu?
So in terms of young scientists collaborating, I think the key word here is community. Ola mentioned earlier about one of the key challenges of when you were doing your PhD around being isolated, and the importance of tapping in to a broader community of similar early career stage scientists who firstly would expand your horizon in terms of your collaboration opportunities, but secondly, a community that think like you, that are committed to their science, but also committed to science for society. And I think the ability of organizations like the GYA, like WAYS, like Ecorsa, to really start to expose young scientists to each other who are dedicated to a common need, I think is vital. In terms of young scientists engaging with policy, the key issue, I think, is around capacity. So we often just say it needs to be done and assume that just by getting more advanced in your career, that somehow that comes with time, and that the skill needed to engage with policy comes. We don't train a young scientist that way, and I think that is why initiatives that young academies and young scientist associations are putting in place are so vital, like the workshop earlier this conference, trying to build capacity to firstly understand what skills are needed, understanding what the policy landscape is, and really empowering and capacitating young scientists to engage.
Thank you. I'd like to try to get one quick question. We're completely red, but if there's a burning question from the audience, just one, and then we'll hang out. Yes, I see you waving. Okay. She's over here. Is there a microphone? Or he is. He's standing up. There you go.
Hello, my name is Anas Horani. I'm from the Jubilee School. And this question is for Dr. Ala Al-Zain. To what extent have ethical considerations hindered your scope in research? Because as young scientists, part of the Jubilee School, we face difficulty in getting approvals for some of our research, even if it does not harm humans nor animals.
I guess that ethics is really an integral part with science, so they should not be separated from one another. What I mean by ethics is not religious beliefs or whatever. Ethics meaning there's an ethical conduct that you should be an ethical scientist. So it's more about the barriers that has to do with openness, connectivity, and transparency rather than ethics, which hindered our collaborations and these opportunities during my PhD, rather than the ethics. Definitely, we always take into consideration when doing an experiment, has it to be with an animal or whatever, whether there's a harm or not. But it was more for the transparency and connectivity.
There was a further question there.
We're sort of at the end, and we're going to get, there's a session coming in afterwards, I believe, right? Oh, there's no session?
We started 15 minutes late, so we should still have 15 minutes. We can't hear you.
All right, I need a signal from the organizers. Can we take a question? Yes, perfect.
Thank you. So I might be a bit biased also being a young scientist, but congratulations to everyone. I have a feeling that this was definitely the most wholehearted talk, or the most honest talk that or panel I've seen so far. Which also shows, which is probably the case because there was a lot of preparation and emotion going into it. The feeling that I have, and I'm luckily not in that situation, but a lot of my colleagues, for example, back in Croatia, I'm studying abroad, is that I'm really, really grateful for having a great supervisor who supports me, I have great funding, so at the moment I'm studying at Oxford. But compared to a lot of my colleagues, the problem there is, for example, the hierarchy. My supervisor is basically very, very supportive, but I know back in Croatia, back in a lot of other countries, because of this strong hierarchy with older scientists, I would say, oftentimes you get locked, as some of us are saying, having very, very little opportunities unless you slave away about 10 years of your life maybe, and then hope to potentially get a position. So especially for those of you who are now at the position of being assistant professors, do you have some advice to give to colleagues who, I'm guessing a lot are in a similar situation at the moment? Yeah.
Thank you very much for a very nice question. I feel that the rules of science will change, and they're changing already. What we heard from the last talk, the blockchain concept may come to science as well. Things may become very transparent, very immediate. You know, people will be able to post their results, thoughts online, and have unique identification to them. So there will be no things behind the closed curtain for which science may really lose the credibility in the near future, because there are a lot of bitter experiences that we hear from the past and from now. I think this may change, and this is already changing very soon. And I think we are trying to change that. We try to make things as open as possible, as inclusive as possible, and try to get rid of this hierarchy, because we need we need a flat system and inclusiveness as much as possible, because the time is up. You know, there's no time for this.
So do we still get a question, or are we being forced to wrap up?
We have
Can I just add one tiny thing? Don't be afraid to fail. I can't tell you how many times I got into shouting competitions with my supervisor. So although it's not fun, eventually it makes you grow as a person and know what you really want.
For the remaining questions, I'm going to ask you to step to the stage because we're really over time now. But I'd like to close out the session by saying...
I close the session.
But, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, let me then draw this session to a close by adding a few final thoughts. There's no shortage of great people in this world. But what do we make of it? How do we foster the crucial skills required to flourish in a society and make the society flourishing? How do we provide an environment that supports people in realizing their ambitions rather than one that creates obstacles? We've just seen a number of cases explicitly demonstrating what is possible. We all, as society, have a role to play in pushing each other forward rather than holding each other back. Should we develop strategies for people, or rather strategies with people? We need to keep an open mind, appreciating and embracing the new and the unknown, rather than being afraid of the dark. And I much agree that we need honesty in what we're doing. I think that it is not that surprising that it is in Jordan that for the first time at the World Science Forum, we had a plenary session drawing upon the diversity of personal records of engagement by young scientists. Now, as participants of this meeting, we're enjoying the hospitality of a country that understands that its future depends on it. But it's not only the future of Jordan. All of mankind share a tiny planet, a blue marble in the vastness of the universe.
Thank you all for coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, the session is now concluded. Please enjoy your evening activities. Thank you.